All right, this is Brian Johnson with Finance and Commerce, and I'm pleased to be joined by our friend Tim Worke, longtime CEO of the Associated General Contractors of Minnesota. Tim recently announced his plans for a well-deserved retirement after more than 2 decades at AGC Minnesota, which represents more than 350 commercial construction firms and industry partners across the state. AGC Minnesota also announced that Abbey Bryduck will be the association's next CEO. Most recently, Abbey served as the executive leader of the Minnesota Asphalt Pavement Association, and she's familiar to AGC members because from 2016 to 2018, she served as AGC Minnesota's Highway Division and Government Relations Director. Tim, good to see you. How you doing today?
Hi, Brian. Good morning. Thanks for having me and for setting this up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining me. It's always good to chat. Well, let's just jump right into it. First of all, congrats on your upcoming retirement. I like to say that to a great extent, you've been the voice and face of Minnesota's construction industry here for quite some time now. You had a great run with AGC Minnesota. Tell us about your decision to hang it up.
Yeah, Brian, as you know, I guess with anyone, it's not easy to look back in your career and decide when the end point is going to be. But I guess I wanted to frame that by saying I've been extremely fortunate in my career. I've really only held um, two jobs with two organizations. Um, Throughout my 40-year career. And I've been fortunate in that I've gotten to choose the time of my departure of my own accord, and not a lot of people get to do that. And I just thought 40 years in a professional occupation was a good time to put an end marker on that. And I also felt strongly that it's time for some new thinking and new skills and new blood to elevate this organization into a much different future. And so, those things converged and picked a date and worked with my executive board to find a transition. So I'm happy to be here and looking at about a 6 month time left on the calendar and looking forward to finishing strong.
Right, so you'll be retiring at the end of the year, I understand, correct?
Correct, Brian.
So there'll be a little transition period there, and which is always good. You alluded to your 40 years, your 40-year career. I know you spent a lot of time with MnDOT prior to joining AGC. And remind me, when did you? I know you took over for Dave Semerad as chief executive some time ago. When can you walk me through that and kind of
Yeah,
how that played out?
timeline wise, Brian, I joined this summer will be marking the start of my 24th year here at AGC. And I came over to AGC in July of 2003. And Dave Semerad was my predecessor and ran this organization for an extended period of time, and a mentor to me and a great friend. And Dave hired me to be the position that Abby formerly held at AGC, which was the advocacy director and also the highway division manager. And I worked in that position for Dave for 16 years until roughly 2016, 2017. In January of 2017, I took over for Dave as the CEO, and extremely fortunate that Dave was able to mentor me to that position. And now, 9 years on, I'm in the similar spot and excited about who our executive board has selected to succeed me. So.
How is Dave doing? Have you kept in touch with him?
Yeah, really well. He has roots out of state in Omaha. He and his wife moved back there, and doing well, and still does a few things that AGC has appointed him to serve on various boards or various activities, and is doing well. So thank you for asking.
That's good to know. You talked a little bit about the transition and tell me about the search for a new CEO and ultimately the decision to bring in Abby. She's obviously well qualified, and I'm sure the association will be in great hands with her. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's really a discussion about a process, Brian. And about 3 years ago, we opened a discussion, me and our executive board here at AGC, about transitioning and their feeling about how important that decision was going to be, and had a forthright discussion with me about what I saw my future as. And we set a timeline that we wanted to work towards, and we spent some time mapping out a process. And now, about a year on from that decision, where we engaged a process, we've arrived at a decision point with Abby being the selected candidate. The the process involved a selection group, and that group consisted of our executive board of directors, 4 persons. And then we selected 4 former board chairs that know the association, that represented both sides of the organization. And that group, about a year ago, or actually a little less than that, about 8 months ago, began to sit down and talk through some critical things like a position description, some critical skills and abilities. And that led us to an eventual job posting, and then to culling through those applications, selecting some interviews, and then coming to a final decision. So we wanted a 6 month transition at least. It's gone a little longer than that. But there'll be at least 5 months where myself and Abbey Bryduck will have time together to walk through sort of all the critical things that are necessary to know to be successful in the position.
And tell me a little bit more about Abby. What was it about her that how did she rise to the top?
Yeah, and my role in that selection, Brian, was limited by my determination, first off, that I felt the executive board should be responsible with some input from me. But they did the selecting based upon some criterion and some critical skills that I shared with them. But Abby is a very unique and a very skilled person, and I've known her a long time. And as you mentioned when we started this conversation, I actually hired her here at AGC early on in my tenure to fill the spot that I vacated, which again was our advocacy manager and our highway division director. Um, and she left to take that position at the uh, Asphalt Paving Association, which really helped her and assisted her in getting some managerial experience, some association development experience, and really credit to her for doing that. It has really elevated her skills. She's well known within the highway sector of the business. She will have some challenges that I'll work with her on with regard to our commercial builders. But she has the skills, obviously, to do the work and to do it well. And then she has, I guess, what I mentioned previous, though, those new and emerging skills dealing with things like technology and application of technology and just membership development. And she will do great work in those spaces. And our selection team was really pleased with the way she presented herself as a leader and how she represented those skills.
Well, that's a great opportunity to segue into my next question, which is about you've been in the industry for a long time now with AGC, as we said, for what, 24 years. And what would you say are the biggest changes you've seen in the industry in that time? When you started out, AI wasn't even a thing, right? And
Right.
now
Right.
it's all everybody talks about. And so, um, can you reflect on that a little bit?
Yeah, and that's a wonderful question, Brian. That um, there have been a lot of things. I openly lead with the fact that I'm not a technically astute person. I learned technology and computing as part of my job development. Was something I was never taught. I never learned in school or early on in my life, and now it's just such a an everyday tool that kids and career professionals have been a part of their life, and that's a different game. But what has changed in the industry is significant. Um, but at the end of the day, it's still a people-oriented business, and the people have remained the same, and that's such an important part of this work is having those relationships and knowing when to access and when to leverage those relationships. But there's been a lot of things, Brian, that have changed. For example, I'll just give you a few quick illustrations. There used to be bid day when everyone would traipse over to the DOT for highway bids and sit together and watch the bids being opened on paper and read aloud. And that all occurs now on computers and is just such a more efficient uh, um, and less publicly available process. But that's just one aspect of the business. And other things in the marketplace have changed dramatically. We've seen a lot of mergers and acquisitions in this business, but Minnesota is uniquely placed amongst our peer states in construction in that we have always had uh, some very accomplished family-owned and family-run businesses. And what I'm seeing out of those businesses today is transitions away from the family but more towards what they call ESOP, employee-owned stock option type of construction for their business operations. So what used to be a really family structured type of market is now drifting more towards an employee ownership space, but we're still uniquely placed. We don't have venture capital firms that own construction. We don't have corporatized structures based out of a major city in the South or something to that nature. And so Minnesotans really see the benefit of that work being performed by and from family-owned businesses in this market. So just a couple of observations.
Hmm. I remember the old plan rooms too. He talked about
Yes,
the certainly a lot of changes. It'll be interesting to see what things look like 20, 25 years from now.
certainly.
Too. So, interesting times. Um, but yeah, I guess just kind of looking back on your career at AGC, what do you think you'll remember as some of the highlights?
Wow. There are just so many, Brian, and challenges, highlights, development things that I'm immensely proud of. But um, we've gone through, and I've had the privilege to lead through some things that no one expected. For example, the COVID shutdown and how business was able to continue. Our industry was extremely fortunate to be able to be considered essential um, in the economy, and construction continued on basically unaffected. And we learned a lot as an industry going through that. We learned about how to process work, how to be safe, working shoulder to shoulder on the job site, and proved that construction could actually function with a highly contagious affliction that the rest of us were shuttered in terms of business operations. But we also learned how to do things differently and create business differently. This kind of interaction with you right here on a Teams call, just 8 years ago, or at the start of my leadership here, we would have never dreamed that that's how we would have meetings of businesses. And then remote work came from that. Hybrid work environments. We've adopted that here with my small team of 8 individuals, and we do that well. Project-oriented things, just a few thoughts here, Brian. The collapse of the I-35 bridge in Minneapolis in the reconstruction of that, and all that went into that, losing 13 people in this industry in a flash, and dealing with that trauma, and then arising from that to be able to demonstrate to the world that this industry can do great things when it's confronted with challenges. There's so many legislative things that I'm immensely proud of. Changes in law, changes in processes, investments in the industry that have given not only our members market opportunity to build from, but also has delivered some of the best quality infrastructure anywhere in the world, and at a huge value for taxpayers. Everything up and down the line, from commercial buildings born of bonding bills to investing in convincing legislators that raising revenue streams or taxes to fund road and bridge projects, having to pass a constitutional amendment in order to dedicate the sales tax on motor vehicles, the convergence of a public policy issue with a public awareness and public advocacy campaign to convince the voters that it was the right thing to do. Just so much work involved with so much success. I really feel immensely blessed, but immensely proud of those things.
Yeah, that brings back a lot of memories to me as well. You mentioned the 35W bridge collapse, the tragedy that was. And I remember the next day you were the first person I called to talk about that. And what also comes to mind is the leadership of people like the late great Congressman James Oberstar, and what he did to cut through the red tape and put that new bridge on a fast track.
Yep.
And that brings back a lot of memories.
The one thing with infrastructure, Brian, when you're involved in it to the level that I have been in my career, you can look around the landscape and you can recall involvement in certain projects or in certain issues that resulted in those projects. And going back to my career at the DOT, I look at things like the St. Croix River crossing, now the Blatnick Bridge that was just announced this week in Duluth, all of those things. It just, they're markers, not only in time, but they're markers in your life that were periods of time that you're fortunate to be able to make a difference.
Hmm. Well, we've covered a lot of ground, Tim. Just I want to be respectful of your time, but wanted to
Yeah.
ask you before we close, what plans you have for retirement? Do you plan to do travel, catch up on your reading, things of that nature?
Well, I'm a very, very active person, Brian, and thank you for asking that as well. And it's unscripted right now. My wife and I love to travel, and we love to see different areas of the world and of the country. And we've got some trips planned immediately for next year. And I love to do outdoor things, and I'm sure I'll find enough there to keep me busy. But certainly we'll miss the people in this industry, and we'll miss the work. But I'm confident that, as people have said to me, your future will reveal itself. And I put a lot of faith in that. I and I'm hopeful that I'll be able to spend a little more relaxed time and enjoy all the things that family and my future holds for me. So I appreciate my time with you. You've always been a very approachable, very fair in the way you represent the industry and how you deal with sources that you've gone to, and I hold that as one of um, my favorite relationships. So thank you, Ryan.
Wonderful. Well, thank you as well, Tim. I've enjoyed working with you, and you still have a few months left, so I'm sure we'll be in touch here
Absolutely.
in the
We'll
coming
finish
months.
strong.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, thank you again for your time, Tim, and we'll stay in touch and we'll talk again soon.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
Take
All right,
care.
bye-bye.
Bye.